Welcome back into Rover Sports. Segment 2. This is our draft preview. The draft will be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The first round, of course, will feature the Philadelphia Eagles as the Super Bowl champs, with, of course, the last pick in the first round. And we will be talking about some of their needs. But as we move along, let's try to go quickly through your top 10, and let's try to move quickly because we do want to get to what I'd like to do is spotlight some of the safeties on this list, because I think the Eagles are looking to pick either a safety or a linebacker with their number one pick. And I have a few names I want to bounce around with you gentlemen. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So I'm going to roll through now the rest of my top 10, and then we're going to get Charlie's opinions on this. And I'm also going to point out some connections here, which can maybe just help people. I sound so cocky when I say that I'm going to help people with the draft, but
you are actually, because most people don't know these players.
Hopefully.
You're not that cocky.
So at number 4, Will Campbell's a big favorite, but Elliott Wolf, with his time with John Dorsey, is known to kind of throw curveballs.
What team are we talking?
Vrabel. We're talking about the Patriots now.
Patriots, okay.
They're looking at offensive line. You have Membu, who's a little bit inconsistent, but very, very fast and physically has tools that are much better than Will Campbell. Will Campbell, his personality is just like a great leader. He has smaller arms. Campbell is going to try, and Campbell is a hard worker. If he's going to fail, it's because he has short arms and just is not athletic enough to make do at the NFL level. His tape was pretty good. Last year, Bruce, he would have been a late first-round pick, Will Campbell. So I have that, and then I'm just going to rip through these, okay? Number 5, Jacksonville. They're thinking Ashton Jeanty or Tet McMillan. Mason Graham here, I'm told, Mason Graham seems like a slam dunk pick, but the Jags are not going to go with Mason Graham, and Graham has a smaller ceiling, but that's the defensive tackle from Michigan.
Let me jump in and talk a little about Ashton Jeanty. Jeanty, he's the best running back coming out of college. He averaged over 200 yards. He really propelled Boise State to the playoffs, to actually a bye. He's a wonderful kid. He's mature as can be. He's gone through everything, and again, it's a running back. So there is kind of a clash between the old guard, what I say 10 years ago, of not drafting a running back high. And then you got guys like Saquon and, of course, Derrick Henry, who have really revolutionized the position. We could go to Marshawn Lynch.
Yes.
So Jeanty is a guy who is healthy throughout college, plays like a bull, very, very physical player. If I were in Jacksonville, Jeanty he's a great player. I think that you really don't have kind of an indifferent fan base there. A guy like Jeanty, he will bring fans out. He is incredible.
And he's also the hometown. He's also from Jacksonville.
Yeah. So I kind of lean towards that pick. I don't know the other two quite as well. What are you thinking here?
I did hear a lot of Tet McMillan, because Tet McMillan's a kid from Arizona who's a big wide receiver. Charlie, I'm going to ask you about the prospects we just named, okay? I'm going to ask you about Jeanty, and then I'll ask you about I really want to hear your opinion on Tet McMillan from Arizona, because he's a polarizing player.
I agree, and I think he could, like you said, could go in that 5 spot. Jeanty, number 1. The only concern, again, I probably saw him play 3 times last year, so I think the only concern I have of him is his usage. I mean, remember those Alabama backs who were so overused in college? When they got to the NFL, they were somewhat like a step slower or beat
somewhat
up.
Worn out,
like Richardson, maybe.
Yeah, Richardson, even Ingram. So again, I think he's a talent. And I agree. We've been texting back and forth. I think he goes 5 to Jacksonville. I agree 100%. Remember, the draft never goes. Even whoever this new guy is for ESPN, and then Mel Kiper. They're right less than 25% of the time about their pick. So it never goes the way anyone thinks it's going to go. There's going to be surprises in this draft, especially because the second round talent is just as talented as the first round. So I think that's why you see no trades happening, because
talk about this other guy, Tet McMillan. Is that the guy's name?
Yeah, he's big guy, 6'4". I think he's 220. He's a big guy. Again, I always look at he's going to be drafted high, so obviously everyone knows he's really decent. What are his concerns? Obviously, he's got a bad. The people say his release. He's got like a press coverage. Again, he doesn't get off press coverage. He doesn't run with a lot of urgency on his routes. Average yak, as we say. But is he extremely talented? Yeah, he's got highlight reel touchdowns. Like if you go back to 23. If you look at the tape from 23, it's like highlight reel after highlight reel. His catch radius is crazy. He gets loose, adjusts his routes if the coverage changes. So yeah, he'll be. I used to hear about Burden being the first pick, Luther Burden, but I think for sure this guy will be the first wide receiver.
He's such a question mark because, like you said, 23 was better, and then he was on a losing team, and Jed Fish left, Charlie, and that team was kind of a joke last year. But yeah, I've heard things about McMillan that he can go 50%, that he doesn't go 100% every route. And the Jags GM talked about drafting guys that are intangibly rich. So McMillan, it's funny, he's either going to go 5 or maybe to the Dallas Cowboys. And then, Charlie, here's a riser. There's a couple of risers in this draft. We have Mykel Williams from Georgia, and then Jahdae Barron. I'm just telling you guys, Jahdae Barron's not going past the Saints because Jahdae Barron is very tight with Nathaniel Joseph, who is Mickey Joseph's brother, the cornerback coach of Texas. Literally his position coach at Texas is with the New Orleans Saints, okay? Kellen Moore's brother is Kirby Moore. He's the offensive coordinator at Missouri, so he knows all about Membu. So I don't expect Membu or Jahdae Barron to get past New Orleans, but the New York Jets at 7 now are interested in Barron, who kind of looks more like a slot receiver, but has intangibles off the charts. And Aaron Glenn is from the Houston, Texas area. So Aaron Glenn's very connected to Texas and to Jahdae Barron. So Bruce, so Charlie, I'm hearing Jahdae Barron's going to be going off the board quickly.
Yeah, and the number 4.39, which he ran in a 42, really has him. A lot of people taking a second look. He is a riser, very late too. Like in the last week, I think I've heard his name a lot, but not before that.
You're talking New York Jets. Is that where you're slotting him
I'm
in?
saying Barron could possibly be there.
I do see Jahdae Barron in some of these drafts. And again, these mock drafts, you got to take with a
grain of
salt here.
Where do you see him?
It says he can play all over, versatility to play. And so obviously I'm looking at some tape of him right now. Texas, right?
Texas. So Charlie, before we get to the Eagles, we're gonna wrap this up with 2 Alabama guys. We have Jihad Campbell, who Charlie I think is a local like Camden, New Jersey kid, who's ferocious off of the edge. And you're a Bama guy. You've watched Jihad play, and then you've also watched Tyler Booker, the guard. What do you think about these 2 players, Jihad Campbell?
Well, I think Campbell, again, before the year, was talking maybe even a top 10 pick. I think he slid down recently, and I don't know why. Could he fall to Philly? I don't think so. Again, he's got, I think, 4.5 40 speed. He's got great size. He's 6'3". I think he's like 230, 235. Again, weakness. Everyone says he lacks the instinct. That's why he wasn't that's why he wasn't more regarded coming out this year. He gets caught behind blocks. He loses contain. And again, he needs to attack more in his gap. But again, he's your typical height, weight, muscle of your average NFL linebacker. He has he fits the suit, as they say. Breaks down blocks well, again, and he's quick to react. So he'll go what? What do you have? You have him in the top 10?
I actually have him like 10 to 15, a little bit later, like Tampa, Todd Bowles. I think Bowles is I think the guy has a high ceiling or a high floor. So I like Campbell a lot. I like Campbell a lot, honestly.
And there's another Alabama player that you want to touch
another
upon.
player, Booker, who's a guard now. He just, unfortunately, on tape, like what I've heard the scouts saying, Bruce is like he's a straight line kind of guard, where a lot of the teams now run zone and Shanahan where you got to pull the guards. It seems like Booker, unfortunately, Bruce, seems like he's more of a straight line guy. They worry about his speed, and that's why he could fall towards the end of round 1. Even though his intangibles are fantastic.
Speed is the big
if we move
concern.
now to the hometown team, most people think that the Eagles, firstly, they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson at safety. They lost their backup linebacker. And again, Nakobe Dean is a guy who's been injured. He played very well last year. He came into his own, and then he got injured again. So he's a smaller guy. So a lot of people think that the Eagles are going to have to draft. They might look at safety. And I'm looking at some of these players on the safeties that are coming out. And there's a guy named Hunter Waller, who is just like a battering ram from Wisconsin. And the exact polar opposite is a guy named Billy Bowman, who is a real finesse player. We move up the line, and we can see at Penn State, you've got Jalen Reed, who I think is a perfect size for a safety, 6 foot, 211, kind of a BC grade. Then, of course, you've watched a lot of Alabama. Malachi Moore is kind of thought to be the 5th best player on the board, a little bit undersized, 5'11", 197. Charlie, have you seen any Malachi Moore?
So a lot of Malachi Moore every year at Alabama. Yeah, we returned some punts too. Very athletic. Kind of got lost in that. This was kind of obviously a transition year for Alabama, where again he kind of got lost. But he was captain. I think he was a 2-year captain. Again, I think he's more of a second round. But the Phillies really picking at the end of the first. So you're right. He could. They could. Again, it all depends. It only takes one scout to like him. Everywhere I see, this Walter Nolan seems to be the name everyone's talking about, or the DN from Boston College everyone's talking about.
As a Raku.
As for the Eagles.
But
yeah,
I also think that the Eagles, I've also seen them with wide receiver. And now, like Dotson, I'm not sure is going to be back, right? So, so would the Eagles possibly, Bruce, draft a third wide receiver? Is that possible?
I heard the wild rumor, and again, I think this is a wild rumor, that they would trade A.J. Brown for like a second or third round. I think that would be horrible. He's their best offensive player.
That would be a disaster.
That would be a total disaster. I don't think they're trading Devontae. They have both of those guys locked up. I think they always say draft the best player. That's a great wide receiver. I just don't think it's a position of need. The Eagles are going to have trouble tackling. There's a guy named Nick Amenwani. I know I'm not saying Amenwari. That's as close as I could get. South Carolina, this is the combine warrior. This is 6'3", 220. The guy could run, he could jump. This guy is the Incredible Hulk. And besides those measurables, those athletic measurables, he's kind of viewed, at least his grades, he's kind of a B grade for both coverage. He's got tight hips. He's not as athletic even as Waller as far as hitting. And you wonder, how is that? The Eagles will sometimes draft projects. This guy seems like a little bit of a project. Where do you think this is? He a second or third rounder?
I like this guy because you have Reed Blankenship, who's kind of your cover guy, and you need hitters. You need guys in the box that are going to come down.
And you need somebody to replace C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
This guy's a dog.
Yeah, you need hitters and physicality.
Did you see this guy at all, Charlie? I mean, he's a specimen.
Sure. And the name that everyone misses, and this guy was talked about as the first pick in the draft at the beginning of this year, James Pierce out of Tennessee. 6'5", D-end. He just is kind of fallen by the wayside. And I hear now that the Eagles are looking at him as well. He's climbing back up to maybe the end of the first round. Again, for some reason, maybe it's got to be wrong because every one of these so-called experts has to go in defensive line for some reason. So it's got to be wrong. You're right. Maybe it is a defensive.
You're right. Maybe it is a safety. There's another safety we're spotlighting. Kevin Winston Jr. is a guy who is extremely athletic. He had a torn ACL 2 years ago, but he grades out pretty well, 6'1" and 210, and he's a safety. He's grading out B+ for the two parameters, that is coverage and also tackling ability. Let's flip to your team for a moment, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's look at their needs. Where do you see the Steelers drafting as far as position? And let's discuss some names. Go ahead, Charlie.
Number one, why do you give up a second-round pick for Metcalf with you have no quarterback? So they have to win now. The talk about them drafting a quarterback, I think, is becoming more and more intense. Again, Rodgers, you can't count on him for anything, but they can't
you're
go
right.
into the season.
Rodgers it seems like he's becoming more unwrapped. There's a lot of mystery with his personal life, whether it's him, whether it's a relative. When you hear things about personal life, you always think about, unfortunately, you think about sickness, you think about drugs, you think about mental illness. And either him or somebody close to him, and he's just not in a good headspace right now. And I think the Steelers, they've got to do something. So if I know that you have eyed some particular quarterbacks for the Steelers, let's discuss some players that you would find acceptable to develop in Pittsburgh. Go ahead.
I am hearing, and it now kind of makes sense because he's been invited to the draft, I am hearing Jalen Milroe. They are very high on him and may take a reach on him in the first round.
So Jalen Milroe seems kind of like a Mike Tomlin guy, very high character. We're talking Steelers now, Spence.
Okay.
And it seems like Rodgers, we spoke about him. He's having personal problems either with himself or his inner circle. He's very non-committal right now. He could retire. Certainly on Pat McAfee.
Charlie, did you hear him on McAfee, by the way?
He probably did. Did you hear McAfee's interview there?
He was brutally just.
I heard. Oh yeah, I read about it. Rodgers. Yeah, I heard he was. The Steelers should move on. That's all I heard after that for sure. The Steelers should definitely move on. That's how bad it went.
So Rodgers. Here's the thing about how it went. They kept asking him about playing in Pittsburgh, and he kept saying, "I have a lot of things going on in my personal life. It has to be right for both sides." And he said, I'm to the point in my career, there is no deadline of when I'm going to make this decision. And he's already kind of missing mini camp. So the Milroe thing is interesting, Bruce. And the one thing about the Steelers is that they didn't protect the Najee Harris love a couple of years ago. I mean, everybody kind of nailed that pick, the Omar Khan, Najee Harris. I also think that this is a Shedeur Sanders possibility. Shedeur and Mike Tomlin seem to be getting along all right. Dion would love his son to play for the Rooney family, to play for a stable franchise. If Shedeur drops like a rock, it could be possible.
The problem is the Steelers were gashed for 300 yards in the wild card loss. Their D-line is weak, man. Kenneth Grant out of Michigan should be the pick if he's available. I don't know what will happen, and maybe Joe draft McCord in like the 5th round and make him a project. Again, I don't think any of these quarterbacks are not. So why not go to the 4th or 5th round? Draft Quinn Ewers, draft Colin. I like Colin McCord as a project, but I think where the Steelers really need help desperately is the defensive line. They were gashed in that playoff game. If you're
right, that was just embarrassing to watch. That they just got completely blown out. And they were out physicaled, and that's certainly out of character for a Pittsburgh team. And so they have to eye somebody to shore up that defensive line. And there's a lot of needs for the Steelers. They're more than a few players away from really being a contender at this point. They've fallen a lot.
I don't know, Bruce. I mean, why would you trade a second rounder for Metcalf if you didn't think that you were ready to compete? I mean, T.J. Watt's in the prime of his
That's
career.
What Charlie said when you stepped out for a brief moment. Charlie was a little baffled by that move.
Yeah, because
what about Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins, maybe Cousins is waiting to say he wants to see the draft happen and make sure no one drafts a quarterback so he doesn't get in the same position. So maybe they trade a 3rd round pick for Kirk Cousins. Who knows?
So if they get a Cousins in a developmental quarterback there, Cousins is probably one of the more mature guys who would actually help develop a quarterback in Pittsburgh, especially with, he's a very high character guy. Obviously, last year he fell off the world. Cousins is trending downwards, but when he's good, he can be very serviceable. I consider him a dead midline. When he's healthy, he's a dead midline quarterback, like a 15. Spence,
I'm reading this list of the D-line guys.
Let's go through the list.
And Charlie, this is a decent list. I mean, they have Derek Harmon from Oregon is on this list. Walter Nolan is kind of very inconsistent. And character-wise, he was the #1 recruit, so he comes with, some ego. He doesn't sack the quarterback, but the talent of Nolan is ridiculous. If you get Nolan motivated, Bruce, that's why he could maybe go to Philly, because Philly has a very good culture. So and the Steelers do as well. If you get Nolan in the right spot, he could pop and be a star. He has the highest ceiling. He's a defensive lineman, defensive tackle.
He's a DT.
DT from Ole Miss. Then you have Kenneth Grant, like we said, Derek Harmon. There's about 4 really good defensive tackles, and then you go to the second round, pretty much.
So if we're looking at linebacker, if you're looking from an Eagles standpoint, I see them slotting a linebacker either the second or third round. They've got Nakobe Dean, who's small and always hurt. They lost their backup, and I see losing all those players, cumulatively, they got poached by a lot of those players. And I worry about essentially deja vu when they went back to 2 years ago. They went from worst tackling to last year, and they basically lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and Nakobe Dean got hurt, and Blankenship is a finesse safety. So I see them as needing. Could you throw us some names of linebackers?
Believe it or not, I think that there's really good linebacker depth in this draft. So I think it's a very deep draft. I wouldn't overdraft if I were the Eagles. I think, Bruce, that they need a guard at offensive line because you let Becton go. You're bringing in Green, who's a huge risk. Don't you think guard is just as pivotal as linebacker, Bruce?
I do think guard, and the reason is you lost Becton. He was a very large guy, and they brought this guy Green in, I guess, from the Texans.
Yes.
And as Charlie discussed a few weeks ago, it's very hard to grade out worst. There's a lot of guards in the league. To grade out the worst, not second worst, 2 years straight, you got to be pretty bad. You've got to not only let up sacks, but a lot of hurries. You got to be slow. You got to take plays off. And the fact that you're believing in Jeff Statland, where he could basically turn, mud into gold, I think you got to push the limits. This is a guy who's going to be playing every down. These offensive linemen don't rotate in, and I don't think you can count on Green. Now, I would say, if you ask me, they're going to probably draft a guard in the third round. I'm going to say they're going to pick safety and then linebacker. Hard to say, depending on the players that are available. You could get some reasonable guards in the third round, and Howie certainly is good at doing that. Go ahead.
Would say the perfect draft for the Eagles would be Starks from Georgia at safety, or Eamon, but probably Starks is a better coverage corner. I just think he's a safer pick, and he's a Georgia guy. There's 3 guards that are really good in this class. Now, I don't know if Booker's going to fit in with the Eagles scheme, but Booker could be a definite possibility out of Alabama and the highest character guy who will work with Stoutland, who's a powerhouse. You also have Gray Zabel. Now, Gray Zabel is actually going to go in the first round, and Seattle is a heavy favorite for Gray Zabel, who is out of North Dakota State, really versatile, and people rave about Zabel.
Big
so
guy,
you'd have to trade up to get him. And then this is a player I love for the Eagles is Donovan Jackson. This is the report on Jackson. They said that Jackson is not going to wow you with his overall power, but he's so consistent, always in the right spot, and seems like a guard who can play for 10 years. Like, that's what they say about Donovan Jackson. Want.
The Eagles, their offensive line is the cornerstone of their team. They've got Saquon Barkley, and again, we talked a little bit about so many, just he ran so much, he had so many yards. It's almost impossible to put together for anybody, even him, 2,000-yard seasons. But it definitely helps when you replace Mekhi Becton with somebody who's going to be consistent. And also, guard is an important position. If you have an inconsistent rookie, then Jalen Hurts could be exposed. And if he goes down, as we discussed, once you get to a backup level, you're done.
You're done.
So the fact that you pick a guy who may not be flashy but consistent, he might have fit in well with Landon Dickerson, Mailata, Lane Johnson. These are really big guys. Cam Jurgens just got extended. That's big news here in Philly. Cam Jurgens, one of your favorite players, one of the nicest guys from Nebraska, got a 4-year deal, got extended, and it shows that the Eagles they invest in their line. And they knew they were going to lose all those guys. They knew they were going to lose Josh Sweat. And they lost linebacker C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I don't believe that was a salary issue. He was slotted to make $8 million. There was definitely some turbulence in there. And obviously, they're solid on corner with their two rookies. Those guys are rookie deals. Do you see, just as far as the Eagles, Charlie, do you see anybody else that you're looking at for the Eagles? Any players that are being attached to this team here in Philly?
I think we're all forgetting one position, tight end.
I think they're going to lose Dallas. Yeah, sorry to talk over you. I think the worst kept secret here in Philly is that Dallas Goedert will be moving on. That they are not going to be re-signing him. They're probably going to trade him. They'll get something for him, but they have to look at tight end. Charlie, do you have any as far as your eye on any particular tight ends coming out? Any thoughts on that one?
I think Roseman could trade, and I think he could trade up and take Loveland from Michigan. That could, that's a Roseman move right there. I think that, again, I think Loveland is rock solid. I think he's a true top 20 pick, and I think that I could see Roseman doing that. 100% could see him doing that.
As far as looking at the tight end position, we haven't touched upon it at all. Could you throw out another name that might be interesting, who might be a highly rated tight end? The Eagles are going to look for somebody who could block. They're going to look with Goddard. The one thing with the tight end, they don't throw a lot to him. And even with Goddard there, he didn't have great numbers, and obviously had a great Super Bowl. He was hurt a little bit. He was plagued by like nagging injuries, hamstrings, calf pulls, and this and that. And I think it's clear with his usage that with Saquon, the two great wide receivers, they are going to let Goddard go. Tight end wise, you see any names for our Philly audience? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Terrence Ferguson at Oregon was just a stud. He was a really, really good player. Now he's a little bit smaller, but Terrence was really good.
He has great hands. We saw him. He could catch the ball in traffic.
Yeah.
He's a quality guy. We saw him interviewed a lot with that team out west. Ferguson was a leader, senior leader.
Beast, a total beast.
And I think that he would fit well with the Eagles.
There's a couple of guys like Thomas Fidone. I mean, Thomas was a 4.5-star guy out of Council Bluffs, Iowa, right on the Omaha border. Played at Nebraska, but just has had devastating injuries at Nebraska. But still, like, when you get Fidone right, the athlete is there. You could look at him later. Elijah Arroyo is a second or third round tight end from Miami. Very athletic, very good player. So I think Loveland, I would be very, very surprised. I'd be surprised if the Eagles went, because you'd have to go into the top 13 to probably get Loveland. That's how good Loveland is. You'd have to give away next year's first rounder to get Loveland.
So for both of you guys,
he slips to 15 or 16, or you can wait for Mason Taylor from LSU in the second.
It's a total. You're right, but
maker.
32 to 15. You're right. It would maybe be a first next year or something. I think Loveland is fantastic as well.
So for both of you guys, I want to ask you, Spencer first. Who do you think is a guy who will be most underrated, who will be drafted low, but will really shine in the NFL? If you have to pick one name, somebody you're really going to circle. And he could be from ASU, by the way.
I know you.
That's a hit.
Want me to say? Well, that's your guy. I want you to say. I love Scat.
Cam Skattebo is my guy for sure.
Cam's your guy.
Human battering ram, and a lot of. I just think he's a wonderful running back, and if the Eagles drafted him, it would be pretty great. Do you have a guy you really like? Who's racing up the board?
I'll say this guy. Like, I'm excited, and it's a quarterback, but I'm excited actually about Dillon Gabriel. Like, I'm excited to see the potential of Gabriel.
So Dillon Gabriel, for all you out there, Dillon Gabriel is a lefty. He seems like he's been in college for a long time. Very mature, medium arm strength.
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
If we are going to have you pick one or even a second, somebody you think is going to be a great value, who's going to be a great pro that may be overlooked, maybe somebody we haven't even spoken about today, and anybody that comes to mind.
I don't know if he's really a sleeper, but I think Omari Hampton could be one of the better, if not the best overall back in the draft. And then, again, I have this weird fiction for Kyle McCord. I think in the right system, when he went to Syracuse, he showed off his ball skills. Again, he's not the strongest arm in the world, but in the NFL, like a Brock Purdy type, like if he gets in the right system, and again, I wouldn't be shocked to see Philly take a flyer on him late.
We have come to the end of our show today. I am Sports Doc. with Charlie Bowles, Spencer G. Want to thank Tyler and Matt Vito. And as always, good night and good sports.